In 1831, a 22-year-old naturalist named Charles Darwin boarded the survey ship HMS Beagle. His 5-year voyage took him to the isolated, volcanic Galapagos Islands, where he cataloged how giant tortoises and finches adapted to distinct ecological niches. Decades later, in 1859, Darwin published his rigorous observations in On the Origin of Species. He was finally spurred into publishing his work after receiving an essay from naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace, who had independently reached the exact same conclusions while working in the Malay archipelago. To secure full marks on a 5-mark board exam question about Darwinism, we must structure our answer into 3 distinct sections: the postulates that make up his theory, the evidences supporting them, and the criticisms of his original framework. We will move through this material by mapping the specific sequence of biological logic Darwin used to explain evolutionary change. Let's follow this flowchart to map out the first 2 postulates. Every living organism possesses an enormous capacity to reproduce, multiplying in a geometric progression. But reading the work of economist Thomas Malthus, Darwin realized that the carrying capacity of an environment, the available food and space, remains strictly limited. Overpopulation colliding with this fixed resource limit forces a fierce struggle for existence. Organisms must constantly compete within their own species, against other species, and against environmental conditions like drought or extreme cold. Amidst this struggle, Darwin observed his 3rd postulate, the origin of variation. No 2 individuals in a population are completely identical. While Darwin recognized these subtle differences as the raw material for evolution, he did not yet have the scientific tools to observe the genetic mutations driving them. This brings us to the core mechanism, natural selection. Nature acts as a filter. It eliminates individuals with unfavorable variations and selects those whose unique traits give them a distinct survival advantage in their specific environment. We often refer to this filtering process as the survival of the fittest. However, a quick point of trivia for your exams: this exact phrase was actually coined by the philosopher Herbert Spencer, and Darwin adopted it later to summarize natural selection. Finally, the origin of new species. Over hundreds of generations, the continuous accumulation of these favorable variations gradually transforms a population. Eventually, the descendants become so structurally distinct from their ancestors that they form an entirely new species. Let's test your active recall of the sequence, a frequent exam question. Mentally put these 4 events in chronological order. The correct sequence is the struggle for existence forces variations to be tested, leading to the survival of the fittest, which drives the mechanism of natural selection. We can observe the mechanics of natural selection proven in the real world. Look at this timeline comparing artificial selection to deep time. By selectively breeding wild wolves, humans produced hundreds of distinct dog breeds in just a few centuries. If human selection can cause massive physical changes so quickly, natural selection operating over millions of years can create new species. We also observe this in wild populations through protective coloration. Here are peppered moths in the United Kingdom. As industrial pollution darkened tree trunks, a dark melanic variation of the moth rapidly replaced the lighter ones because they were better camouflaged against predators. These observable adaptations confirm that nature continuously filters populations for specific survival advantages, proving the mechanical logic laid out in Darwin's postulates. While the postulates explain how organisms adapt, the original theory had several blind spots you need to know. First, Darwin clearly explained the survival of the fittest, but he failed to explain the initial arrival of the fittest, meaning how new complex organs provide any advantage when they first appear small and rudimentary. Second, Darwin treated all variations equally. He didn't distinguish between non-heritable somatic changes, like physical traits acquired from the environment, and heritable germinal mutations in the DNA. Because he lacked an understanding of modern genetics, Darwin proposed the incorrect pangenesis hypothesis to explain inheritance. He also entirely missed the concept of large, sudden, discontinuous variations, or mutations, which were later discovered by Hugo de Vries. He also struggled to explain the persistence of useless vestigial organs across thousands of generations, or cases where extreme overspecialization led straight to extinction. Look at the massive, unwieldy antlers of the Irish elk, which eventually became a fatal hindrance rather than a survival advantage. Darwin established the mechanical framework of evolutionary theory. To reconcile his original blind spots, biologists would later integrate his work with the laws of 20th century genetics. Here is a map of the syllabus requirements for this topic. We have the 6 postulates in sequential order on the left, the observable evidences in the middle, and the classical criticisms on the right. Take a screenshot of this summary. For your exams, make sure you can write out the strict chronological sequence of his postulates and clearly distinguish between the mechanical steps Darwin observed in nature and the genetic mechanisms he lacked.